The movie begins with David Rice, a quiet teenager in a small rural town, carrying a snow globe and a secret crush on a girl named Millie. He's painfully shy, the kind of kid who lives in the margins, unnoticed and polite. When a bully named Mark humiliates him in front of classmates and shoves the snow globe onto a frozen lake, David's small, fragile world starts to crack. Determined to prove he's not completely powerless, David steps out onto the ice to fetch the globe, ignoring Millie's frightened pleas. The ice gives way, the cold water closes over him, and, in that instant of terror, the ordinary rules of the world break too. David doesn't drown, he reappears, soaked and bewildered, in the warm, dusty quiet of a public library miles away. Back home that night, his father William is furious when David shows up late and wet. The confrontation spikes. When William barges into David's room a second later, the teenager vanishes again, this time back to the library. The impossible truth lands on David like a physical blow. He can teleport. The discovery is both blessing and curse, a doorway to freedom that opens into shadow. David chooses escape. He packs what little money he has, leaves his father's house, and begins to learn the rules of this new dangerous gift. The first revelation is simple and brutal. He can only jump to places he's already been. A travel magazine in a park becomes a mental map. When he thinks of the Empire State Building, where he once stood as a child, he blinks and finds himself on its rooftop, wind slicing at his face, and the city spread like a secret beneath him. With the limit of his power clear and with no other options, survival becomes his first mission. He scopes a bank, memorizes the vault's layout, slips back at night, and teleports inside to take stacks of money. The thrill of a successful heist quickly turns into habit. He repeats the jumps until his bag is full, and a life of instant travel and luxury begins to replace the frightened boy who once froze on a lake. But power draws attention. A man named Roland Cox shows up after the bank robbery, cold and inscrutable, insinuating he knows more than he should. Roland suspects teleportation is the culprit behind the impossible theft, and his presence feels like the first dark weather front rolling in, quiet, inevitable, and deadly. Years later, David has become a phantom of privilege, a penthouse in New York, private jets, and postcards from everywhere. He lives like a ghost that owes nothing to borders. He materializes in London bars, surfs enormous waves in Fiji, lunches atop the Sphinx in Egypt. His possessions are souvenirs of a life without limits, but the more he takes, the more fragile his freedom becomes. In London, a man named Griffin sees David teleport and recognizes the move, not with envy, but with a weary, dangerous familiarity. Griffin is another jumper, but he's not a thrill seeker. He's a soldier in a centuries-old war, and his arrival signals that David's private paradise is about to be invaded by a very public enemy. Far from David's carefree jet setting, Roland and his group hunt down another jumper in a jungle with brutal efficiency. They use cables and devices that latch onto a jumper mid-teleport to tether them, limiting their range and sending them spiraling into traps. When Roland calls jumpers abominations and kills without hesitation, he reveals the cruel logic behind his crusade, a zealotry that views teleportation as a sacred boundary crossed. Roland's confrontation finally comes to David's door. He breaks into David's penthouse and assaults him with electrified weaponry and anchoring cables, paladin tools built to punish, restrain, and control. Each time David tries to escape, the cables pull him back, jolting him toward helplessness. He barely cuts himself free, clinging to money and memory as he flees into the night. David returns to his old life in search of answers, and most of all, Millie. He finds her working in a bar. Seeing her ignites the tenderness he's been denying. A fight with Mark ends with a cruel improvisation. David teleports his old bully into a bank vault and walks away. He invites Millie to travel with him, promising Rome and wonder, and she says yes, hungry for the life she's always dreamed of, unaware that danger is already traveling with them. In Rome, history becomes a stage for an unexpected revelation. Griffin confronts David in the Colosseum and pulls back a curtain of knowledge. He shows David maps, battle plans, and the scars of someone who has spent years fighting the Paladins, a violent religious order that believes teleportation violates divine law. Griffin warns David, the Paladins will not stop at chasing jumpers. They'll hunt their families and anyone close. Arrest for trespassing in the Colosseum spirals into a shock when Mary, David's mother who left years ago, appears pretending to be an embassy official and frees him. She gives David a tiny window of mercy, a key to unlock his cuffs, and then vanishes. The moment is electric. It exposes a truth David has never been ready to accept. His past has layers he didn't know existed, and the people he loves are tangled in the battle that follows him. Roland's reach grows crueler. He visits William posing as an IRS agent, twists lies into violence, and leaves David's father battered and unconscious. David learns the devastating cost of his gift. It endangers everyone connected to him. He rushes William to the hospital and finally understands that escape isn't just about running from his past. It's about choosing who will hurt if he stays. Griffin's hideout is an atlas of obsession. Pinned photos, maps tracing paladin movements, and a ledger of losses. He's been waging a guerrilla war for years. He tells David the story of a conflict that stretches back to the Dark Ages, a war fueled by dogma and fear of those who can be everywhere at once. It is a war David never asked for, but now he's in the center of it. Millie becomes the collateral everyone feared. Roland's team traces a jump scar, the shimmering residue left by a teleport, back to David, and that trail leads straight to Millie's apartment. The Paladins breach the fragile sanctuary Griffin has built, and chaos explodes into violence. In the fray, David is pinned by electrified cables, while Griffin tears through the attackers, flame and teleportation becoming blunt instruments in a desperate defense. When Millie is snatched back through a portal, dragged toward a waiting ambush, David refuses to let her be sacrificed to a war he never wanted. Griffin arms a bomb with the intent to obliterate the Paladin's presence, but David takes the device and the chase becomes a globe-spanning ballet of danger. Egypt, San Francisco, New York, jump scars like footprints across the world as two jumpers wrestle for control. Their conflict culminates in sheer, brutal desperation. Griffin is struck by a collapsing electrical pylon, and David is forced to make a choice. Leave Griffin to his fate or abandon the mission and go after Millie. He chooses Millie. He jumps back into the apartment where the Paladins have reinforced their hold, and every attempt to teleport racks the building with violence as cables tether him and the walls groan under strain. Then David unleashes a power he barely understands, a final raw surge of teleportation that drags the entire apartment with him. The building tears free of the city and drops back at the frozen lake where his childhood ended and his exile began. Paladins tumble into the ice, and the public library reappears in a different heartbeat. The world glitches with the force of his desperation. Roland survives long enough to crawl toward David's wake, but instead of killing him, David makes a colder, lonelier choice. He teleports Roland to the edge of the Grand Canyon and leaves him there, alive, isolated, and powerless. That act is mercy and punishment rolled into one, a reminder that David is no simple hero and that vengeance and restraint can live in the same hand. The final heartbreaking twist arrives when David finds his mother and understands the full betrayal. Mary is a paladin. She reveals that she left when he was a child to hide him from the war and to protect him by becoming part of the machinery that hunts jumpers. Her confession is the sharp edge of truth, love braided with compromise, sacrifice laced with cruelty. Mary gives David a gift he never wanted, a head start. She warns him the war will continue, but she'll grant him time to run. For the first time, David sees how thin the line between refuge and prison can be. His gift allows flight, but not sanctuary. It grants him travel, but not peace. In the film's final cadence, David rejoins Millie. They stand together at the edge of everything, hands seeking each other in a quiet moment after the storm. They take each other's hands and step into the void, not fleeing a world of consequences so much as choosing to face them together, lovers wrapped in motion with nowhere left to call home. This is not a simple story of escape. It's a portrait of power's price, how the ability to be anywhere steals the right to be safe somewhere. David's teleportation gives him the world and takes from him the quiet certainty of belonging. If you were in David's shoes, suddenly able to vanish and reappear anywhere you'd been, would you use that power to run toward pleasure, to punish those who hurt you, or to protect the people you love? Tell me in the comments which path you'd choose and why. So if this story hooked you, hit that like button, subscribe to Great Animation Recaps, and ring the bell to get more cinematic recaps that pull you into the heart of the movie. Drop your thoughts below. What would you do if you could go anywhere instantly? And after you comment, check out our playlist for more deep, dramatic retellings, because every story here is designed to take you somewhere new.